A reading from the book of the prophet Ezekiel. What? Am I likely to take pleasure in the death of a wicked man? It is the Lord Yahweh who speaks, and not prefer to see him recognize his wickedness and live? That is the Old Testament reading in the, what we call it, New Revised Common Lectionary, the lectionary that is used by almost all of the church that still uses a lectionary. And I was struck by it when that cropped up. It was the same day that one of my Facebook memories suggested that for the price of one of our obsolete aircraft carriers. I mean, you know, aircraft carriers are great for fighting World War II, but one bomb falling from fired by a missile from space would wipe it and its destroyer escorts out in a single boom. One of our fancy new aircraft carriers designed to kill the men and women and children and dogs and cats and much cattle, as it says in Job. I should probably end this video with a reading from Job. For the price of that aircraft carrier, we could build a colony on the moon. Now, I don't exactly know what comparables there are to building a colony on the moon, or even entirely why we need to build a colony on the moon, but you can learn a lot about a country or a person or a family by what they spend their money on. And I'm intrigued that a lot of folks in the United States claim that the United States is a Christian nation, something which I think it has never officially been, obviously. We did in the 50s add the phrase "under God" to the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. But you know, that was back when I was a fairly devoted Christian, and I still do refuse to pledge allegiance to the flag. Allegiance to flags, I don't think, is a helpful thing for life on the planet. Anyway, we added "under God," a kind of a sop to our feelings of religiosity, and a way to perhaps convince us that we are indeed the hammer, the hammer of the Lord, so to speak. I look back over the wars, take your pick, almost any war, and wonder whether it would have been much better in the long run if rather than trying to kill the people that we thought were evil, we had tried to convince them of the wickedness of their ways. Perhaps, like the people of Nineveh, they would have repented. I'm intrigued. Of course, you know, these sort of discussions always get to Hitler in no time, but what I'm intrigued by, particularly in relation to this passage from Ezekiel, is that the Nazis were concerned that some of their practices would offend the good Lutheran folk and Catholic folk of Germany, although I think, you know, I don't know whether the Catholic priests were paid by the state or not. The Lutherans were. They were concerned that the good Christian folk of Germany would be offended by the SS marriages, which seemed pagan. They weren't concerned that the good Christian folks of Germany would be concerned by their invading other countries and dropping bombs on them and shooting them and all the atrocities which we like to pretend are unheard of in the rest of the world, but which unfortunately are fairly common. And our good buddy Joseph Stalin greatly surpassed the atrocities of Germany, but you know, he was our ally, right? At least until 1945. How quickly our definition of the evil man changes, and how willing we are to invest our resources in efforts to kill him rather than to convince him of his evil ways that he might repent. I'm not exactly sure what it would look like to do that. It's been so seldom practiced. I mean, there was the Peace Corps, but it basically was about convincing people that they should have indoor plumbing, I think. And it doesn't begin to generate as much money for Lockheed Martin as the development of a new stealthy jet fighter does. But I suspect that if our best minds, well, we don't elect our best minds to Congress, do they? They're a group of goofballs who can't come up with a budget and have to have a dress code like kindergarten kids. But if we did have a government that encouraged our best minds to participate in it, I think it's a signal thing to consider that some of the folks who think, whom I consider perhaps our best minds, look at the government and say they want nothing to do with it. I think of the outstanding Republican female potential candidate for presidency. One has to be careful about phrasing these things these days. I don't want to get banned from YouTube. Condoleezza Rice, who drew an immense crowd when she spoke in Fayetteville when I was there, filled the football stadium. And she says, no, she would much rather teach at Stanford. That's a sane thing to do, a helpful thing to do, than be part of the government. Well, this is probably a useless sort of thought. I don't think my posting this to Facebook is going to be, or YouTube, going to be seen by any senators or representatives or more importantly, lobbyists for Lockheed Martin and say, how could we find a way to monetize convincing evil folk that they should repent? But I do feel better. And that may be all I'm doing. I may just be virtue signaling. See, I don't want to kill folks. I want to make them think like me. But I think it's nice sometimes to consider the alternatives to the way that we spend our money and what we consider to be problems, and recognize that there very well may be alternatives to our usual solution to a problem. Another thing that cropped up on this day in Facebook memories, and I confess, although Facebook is such a strange thing, but I like to look at my memories, and I was confronted with a post I made about how bizarre it was that Bill Clinton, then the good liberal president of the United States, went on television to say he could not understand why teenage kids would find guns as the solution to their problems. Now, the teenage kids who had found guns as a solution to their problems were actually kids from my hometown. I used to say, I come from Jonesboro, Arkansas, the city ready for tomorrow and the land of opportunity. I'm sure you've heard of it, but unfortunately when Dan Rather went to visit my hometown because of a shooting at one of the local high schools, you had heard of it. Billy Boy said he couldn't understand why anyone would resort to that. The same day, he had sent bombers over Central Europe and dropped bombs on the bridges on the Danube. he was not following the example of a previous good liberal Democratic president, Lyndon Baines Johnson, whose motto was from the book of the prophet Isaiah, "Come, let us reason together." Well, there you have it. A probably surprising video for some of you who came for the VR glasses, but I try not to be unhappy because I recognize that Western civilization has been rejected, that the United States is a pretty well a failed nation, and we are closer perhaps than we've ever been to blotting out life as we know it on this planet with nuclear weapons. But I think it is useful to kind of be alert and pay attention to what's going on, and wonder if some of the marvelous ingenuity that brings us all these great VR glasses might be used to come up with some better ways to deal with folks than to kill them. Death is so damn permanent. Well, subscribe, like, comment, and all those good things, and have a happy Sunday, despite the fact that, this might be the day we all get blown up because we're fools. The best line from Shakespeare remains, Puck's in Midsummer Night Dreams, "What fools these mortals be."